The times they are a-changin', and maybe the next few years is going to be tough for a number of EV makers. It might be tough for a number of automakers overall. It's not necessarily true that just because you make a gas guzzler, you've got easy days ahead, but there are companies doing better than others and some doing much worse. That's who we're going to talk about today. I'm joined by my good friend Randy Kirk. Head on over to his channel, see what he's up to. You can also find him on X. He's a lot of fun. I'm Brian. Welcome to Futuraza. How are you, Randy?
Hi, Brian.
Yeah. Hi.
Yeah,
So this is fun.
I'm a fun guy.
Well, I thought you'd like.
We all remember that joke. Yeah.
Yes, you are. You're my mushroom, Randy. Trump can get EVs back on track, ditch the mandates and subsidies, let consumer choice drive the market. What kind of person do you think would say something like that?
Elon Musk.
Well, federal and state governments have been trying to persuade Americans to buy electric for using mandates and taxpayer-financed incentives. These policies aren't working. Would you agree that the incentives have had no impact?
Oh, absolutely not. I would say that any incentive has an impact. I don't care whether it's the government or the company that's providing the incentive. Otherwise, if they didn't work, people would stop doing them. It's really
That's right. That's right. I think that's fairly true. And the sale of EVs has stalled. Would you say that's true?
Well, the sales of EVs were going up on the order of 50% a year. Tesla sales were going up 50% a year worldwide. EV sales were going up 50% a year. You're going to have times when, for various reasons, you may not be able to have that kind of continuation of that slope. But the slope is still upward. It's just not at 50% a year for the last 15, 16 months. But maybe 2025 might see a revitalization. Maybe it goes up 30, maybe it goes up more.
25, maybe 26. I think we're looking back at strong numbers again. So I would argue that part of this particular Wall Street Journal publication is incorrect. I wouldn't say they've stalled. I'd say they've slowed.
Right.
Growth is still growth. The incoming administration can course correct by replacing these mandates and subsidies with policies that give customers affordable options while reducing greenhouse gases. How can gives customers affordable options? What's the affordable option?
Yeah, I don't have any idea what they're talking about there. I mean, that's what the whole idea of the $7,500 discount was. And I think it's better to let the car companies have the data. The data is always changing. It could be tax deduct. There could be interest rates are changing. Different companies are offering different deals at different times. New products are being introduced. There's so many variations in the marketplace. Let the companies figure out how to promote their cars the best.
Which company would you, of the big players globally, which one would you least trust to be on the right track?
On EVs?
Mm-hmm.
On EVs, Toyota.
Over the past 4 years, Toyota hasn't wavered in its goal of reducing greenhouse emissions as much or as quickly. Our approach provides consumers with many choices: hybrids, plug-in hybrids, fuel cell electric. I like how they call it electric rather than hydrogen. Battery electric, if you count the buzz forks, which no one does. We believe this is the best way to meaningfully reduce emissions. Yeah.
So they use Toyota as their example of offering lots of choices. Okay.
Everyone can serve as an example in life. Everyone's got a purpose. Toyota's is to serve as the wrong example. Current EPA regulations are de facto electric vehicle mandate because they set emission standards that are impossible to meet without a majority of vehicles being battery electric. I think I would mildly agree with that. Would you?
Well, I would mildly agree with it as well. I happen to be someone who generally doesn't like government getting involved in these kind of things. I will say that one of the most interesting things to watch over the last 30 years was the government, or maybe longer, 40 years, was the government coming in and requiring certain mileage standards. And the companies saying, no, there's no way we can do that. And then somehow they did it. So this was maybe a contrarian example to my philosophy of government, where it kind of worked, and that maybe even without BEVs, there would be a way to get to these numbers. If maybe it means that the cars get a lot smaller. I don't know, but in general, I would say get out of the way and let the customer decide.
Well, I would say that a lot of the big three have uh, exhibited behavior that makes evident that their desire to do the right thing has to be motivated. It has to be incented. They didn't want to put in head restraints. Headrests. They didn't want to put in safety belts. They didn't want airbags. They had to be dragged kicking and screaming. And only once the data was irrefutable that, well, these, backup cameras, that's going to add cost. Really not that much if you put it on every single car. Yes, yet even with costly subsidies, EV sales are still less than 10% of the market.
The U.S.
Yeah.
market.
The U.S. market.
US market. Yes, I mean we have a couple of European countries now that are in the 90% range. Or I guess one is in the 90% range. Others that are above 70%. You got China that's above 50%. That's a pretty good size market. I think it's the number one market, by the way. Oh, yeah, that's right. It is. So the number one market in the world is about 50% now. I think that's a combination of hybrids and full battery electrics. But
I think it is.
BEVs themselves are about 25% of that market. And in Norway, I think the BEVs are the vast majority. I think it could be,
97, 98, I think.
Well, I think that's also including hybrids again. I think the BEVs might be about 75 or 80 of the total. Yeah.
It's interesting. Toyota's invested nearly $14 billion to build a battery plant in North Carolina. 14, really? But EPA mandates harm the auto industry's ability to offer a variety of zero or low emission vehicle options at different price points. First of all, if you're talking fuel cell, if you're talking hydrogen, you're talking out your exhaust pipe is what I would argue. CARB set a zero emission vehicle mandate that goes even further. Starting in 2026, 35% of all new vehicles must be zero emission. That percentage will continue increasing until 2035, when all of them must be zero emission. And a dozen states, plus the District of Columbia, have adopted California's rules. A dozen states? I'm only aware of like 6 or 7. Well, all right, let's say it's a dozen. But, California, a lot of California's rules have been implemented by manufacturers coast to coast just because it's cheaper than building 2 versions.
Oh, besides that, California is the 5th largest economy in the world, and it's probably, if you counted if you went to, this would be interesting to check on. So you've got China's number 1, you got the United States number 2, and then if you took out California might be number 3. I mean, it might be, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if you're going to build a special car, some people build special cars for Japan. That you don't buy them anywhere else in the world. For years, you had special cars that were built for the United Kingdom that you don't see anywhere else in the world. Building a special car for California would make sense, but it makes even better sense to build a car for California that can be sold all over the world, or even sold in the States.
Now, who the heck is Jack Hollis? Let's see if we can figure out who this gentleman is. Buried all the way at the bottom, Mr. Hollis is the COO of Toyota North America.
I see. He wrote the article.
I see. Or at least signed off on it. Yeah, this is the guy. Look at that smile. That smile says Toyotathon. Oh, yeah. Executive Vice President and COO of Toyota North America. He's also the president of Toyota Motor Sales.
Yeah.
What a cool guy. I would argue that everything he says should be ignored. I would argue that any correct points he made are overshadowed by his personal bias. He's saying, look, you can't make an EV that people will buy. No, Jack, you're saying you can't build an EV that people will buy. People will buy anything if the price is right. But making a compelling car that's also cost effective and profitable is really, really hard, as we've seen from virtually everyone.
Yeah. We are in transition. Companies are going to be making it. We've seen how many of these now in our lifetimes. I mean, my lifetime has been bajillions. You're so much younger than me, but but no, I mean, you've got all these disruptions, and when you have these disruptions, you have companies that just have their heads stuck firmly in the sand, and maybe Toyota gets it in time. Right now, the evidence would be that Toyota doesn't get it at all. $14 billion for that battery plant. Can that be right? I mean,
He doesn't.
that is
I
the
don't
Toyota.
know how.
I don't know. I mean, Tesla builds entire manufacturing plants for less than that.
I don't know if Tesla has spent 14 billion on factories.
On Austin, total? Yeah.
Total. Well, yeah, I think Austin plus Berlin
Maybe 15.
was definitely less than 14.
I think
You
so,
could
yeah.
you could put in half of Shanghai and still be under 14. But Giga Nevada was less than 14, and I'm going to argue a bigger plant than what Toyota claims to be building. He's like, look, we're doing our part, but let us keep selling hybrids. And I don't know. I'm not sure who's meant to read his op-ed, and I'm at least grateful that the Wall Street Journal clearly labeled it as Wall Street Journal opinion,
Yeah.
and did put his credentials at the bottom, because Jack, come on, man. I know it's wheel and deal and days, the holiday. I've ordered too many Toyotas. They all must go, but come on, just build a better car. Just build a better car. It's all you got to do. In the comments, what did we miss? What do we misunderstand? Leave it, I beg of you. I beg you. Comments, as you know, mandatory. Everybody else, like, subscribe, do what you do. Stay tuned and juicy, and I cannot wait to hear from you clever robots when you don't drive a Toyota fuel cell vehicle.